Ambassador was drinking her morning coffee when the universe changed forever. She stood near the window of the diplomatic station called Concordance, watching the stars and thinking about her meeting later that day. The station floated in neutral space, far from any planet, and served as a place where different alien species came to talk and make peace. Her communication device beeped with an urgent sound she had never heard before. She put down her coffee and touched the screen. The face that appeared was. His name was Elder, and his blue-green skin had turned pale. His large, dark eyes were filled with terror. "Ambassador," he said, his voice shaking. "They came without warning, the hegemony. They are burning everything, our cities, our people. Please, you must tell Earth. You must tell them that we—" The screen turned to static. One word came through before the signal died completely. Hegemony. Felt her blood turn cold. She tried to reconnect the signal. She tried again and again. Nothing, only silence. They were humanity's oldest friends among the stars. 300 years ago, when humans first traveled beyond their solar system, they had been scared and alone. The galaxy was full of ancient species with technology far beyond anything Earth possessed. Most of those species looked at humans with either pity or contempt. Humans were newcomers. They were primitive. They were nothing. But the Had welcomed them. They were a gentle people, amphibious beings who lived both on land and in water. They loved art and music and healing. They had no great military. They had no interest in conquest. What they had was kindness. They shared their medical knowledge with Earth. They gave humans cures for diseases that had killed millions. In return, humans helped to build colonies on 3 moons in their system. The 2 species became like family. Human children learned songs in school. Families visited Earth's oceans and swam with wonder in waters so different from their own. Now those friends were screaming for help. Ran to the station's command center. Officers from a dozen species looked up as she burst through the door. She ordered them to scan Prime immediately. The long-range sensors took several minutes to gather data from so far away. Those minutes felt like hours. When the data came back, had to hold onto a console to keep from falling. The main screen showed what had once been Prime, a beautiful world of blue seas and green continents, home to 4.2 billion souls. Now it was glass. The surface had been bombarded so heavily that the rock had melted and hardened into something smooth and dead. The orbital stations around the planet were debris fields. The 3 colony moons were burning. An alien officer, a tall being, made a clicking sound of horror. "Total extinction event," he said. "No survivors on the planet's surface. The attack happened approximately 6 hours ago." 6 hours. While had been sleeping, while she had been making her morning coffee, an entire civilization had died. The Iran hegemony had done this. Everyone in the galaxy knew them. They were an empire built on conquest and fear. Their species was reptilian, cold-blooded in both body and soul. They believed that strength was the only virtue and that weakness deserved extinction. For centuries, they had been expanding, swallowing smaller species and forcing them into slavery. But they had never done anything like this. Even they had followed certain rules. You could conquer a planet. You could take prisoners. You did not simply erase an entire species from existence. A new transmission came through the station systems. It was broadcast on all frequencies, meant for everyone in the sector to hear. The face on the screen was Oran. His scales were dark red, and his yellow eyes showed no emotion at all. "Let this serve as a lesson," the Oran commander said. "They were weak. They sheltered behind others. They thought friendship would protect them. It did not. Those who shelter the weak will share their fate. Terra is next." The transmission ended. Stood frozen. Then she moved faster than she had ever moved in her life. She sent emergency messages to Earth. She contacted every human ship and station in the sector. She demanded an emergency meeting of the Galactic Compact, the alliance of species that was supposed to maintain peace. The Compact met within hours. Representatives from 30 species gathered in the station's great hall, stood before them and played the footage of destruction. She played Elder's final transmission. She demanded action. The response made her sick. "We offer our deepest condolences," said the representative from the Confederation. "This is a tragedy beyond words." "We strongly condemn this act of aggression," said the delegate from the Hollow Worlds. "We will send a formal protest to the hegemony." "We propose economic sanctions," said another. "Perhaps restricted trade in certain luxury goods." Listen to them talk. She listened to their empty words and their meaningless gestures. They had been members of this compact. They had trusted these allies to protect them. And now those allies offered nothing but words. "Will anyone send ships?" she asked. "Will anyone stand with Earth against the hegemony?" Silence, eyes looked away. The truth was clear. The hegemony was too powerful, the risk was too great, no one would fight. Left the hall without another word. On Earth the news spread like fire. People wept in the streets. In cities around the world, humans gathered at cultural centers to mourn. They had been loved, they had been friends, and now they were gone. The United Earth Council met in emergency session. Military leaders, politicians, and scientists gathered in the great chamber beneath the Swiss Alps. Admiral stood before them. He was 60 years old, with hair and eyes that had seen too much. "The hegemony has declared their intention to attack Earth," he said. "Our public fleet is not enough to stop them. We have perhaps 3 months before they can assemble their forces and reach our territory." The room was silent. 3 months, and then extinction. Admiral took a breath. "There is another option, Directive Black 7. Several council members went pale. Most had never heard that name, those who had wished they never had. "For 150 years we have prepared for this possibility," the Admiral continued. "We hoped it would never come. We prayed it would never come, but we prepared." He told them what Directive Black 7 meant. He told them about the ships hidden in the darkness between planets. He told them about the weapons that had never been used. The vote was unanimous. That night, Admiral sent a message to 12 locations across the solar system. The message contained only 4 words. "Wake the Reapers up." In the cold darkness of hidden shipyards, lights began to turn on. Engines that had slept for decades began to warm. Crews who had waited their entire lives for this moment reported to their stations. Humanity was done talking. 150 years before the burning of, humanity learned the most important lesson of its existence among the stars. The galaxy did not care about them. The galaxy would not protect them. If humans wanted to survive, they would have to protect themselves. First contact had been a shock. When human explorers first encountered alien life, they had expected many things. They had imagined wise beings who would share knowledge. They had dreamed of joining a peaceful community of civilizations. What they found was very different. The galaxy was old. Some species had been traveling between stars for millions of years. They had technology that humans could barely understand. Their shields could stop any weapon Earth possessed. Their ships could cross the galaxy in weeks while human vessels took years to travel between nearby stars. Most of these ancient species looked at humanity the way humans might look at insects. Interesting perhaps, certainly not important. The Galactic Compact allowed Earth to join, but it was clear that humans were the smallest and weakest member. They had no voice. They had no power. They had nothing but hope. But humans also had something else. They had history. They had memory. They had the knowledge of what their own species had done to itself for thousands of years. The galaxy had grown comfortable. Wars between major powers still happened, but they followed rules. Fleets fought fleets. Planets were conquered, not destroyed. Populations were enslaved, not exterminated. Total war, the kind of war humans knew from their own past, was considered primitive and wasteful. A small group of human leaders looked at this comfortable galaxy and asked a simple question. What if someone broke the rules? What if some power decided that total destruction was acceptable? What would humanity do then? The answer was Directive Black 7. In secret facilities scattered across the solar system, humanity's greatest minds went to work. They built shipyards hidden inside asteroids in the belt between Mars and Jupiter. They dug research laboratories deep beneath the surface of Luna. They constructed weapons factories in orbit around Neptune, so far from Earth that even close allies never visited. The project had only one goal: build ships that could fight any enemy, build weapons that could destroy anything, build a force so terrible that no rational being would ever dare to threaten humanity. They called the result the Reaper-class dreadnought. The Reapers looked nothing like the elegant warships of other species. Galactic ships were beautiful, with smooth curves and glowing shields. They were designed to impress as much as to fight. The Reapers were designed only to kill. Each Reaper was 2 kilometers long, a massive wedge of black metal that seemed to swallow light itself. Their hulls were covered in something called adaptive armor. When the armor was hit, it learned. It changed its structure to better resist the next attack. Hit it with energy weapons and it became reflective. Hit it with kinetic rounds and it became denser. Hit it with both and it adapted to both. The weapons were worse than the armor. Standard galactic warfare used energy weapons, lasers and plasma bolts that traveled at light speed and could be stopped by shields. The Reapers carried something different: mass drivers that fired tungsten rods at 12% of light speed. At that velocity, a rod the size of a human arm carried more energy than a nuclear bomb, and shields, designed to stop energy, let physical objects pass right through. The Reapers also carried plasma lances that burned hotter than the surface of a star. They carried missile systems that could track targets across an entire solar system. They carried electronic warfare suites that could blind enemy sensors and crash enemy computers. But the most terrible weapon was the void bomb. Human scientists had discovered something strange about the fabric of space itself. Under certain conditions, with enough energy applied in exactly the right way, space could be torn. A hole could be opened that led nowhere. Anything that fell into that hole simply ceased to exist. It was not destroyed. It was not transported somewhere else. It was erased from reality. The void bomb created such a hole, only for a second, only in a small area, but everything within that area was gone forever. 12 Reapers were built over the course of a century. 12 crews were trained in absolute secrecy. These crews were volunteers and they knew what they were volunteering for. The Reapers had no escape pods. Once a crew boarded their ship for a real mission, they accepted that they might never leave it. This was not a design flaw. It was a statement. The crews of the Reapers were not fighting to survive. They were fighting to win, no matter the cost. Captain had commanded the Reaper called Nemesis for 15 years. She had dark skin and hair and eyes that seemed to look through people rather than at them. She had been born on a space station orbiting Mars, and she had joined the Hidden Fleet at 22 years old. Now she was 51, and she had never fired her weapons in anger. She had prayed she never would. When the order came to wake the Reapers, was in her quarters reading a book of poetry. She had learned their language years ago. She had visited their world 3 times. She had friends there, or she had thought she did. Now those friends were ash. She closed the book gently and walked to the bridge of her ship. Her crew was already at their stations. 800 men and women who had trained their entire adult lives for this moment. She looked at their faces and saw grief and rage and determination. "You know what happened," she said. Her voice was calm and steady. "You know why we exist. For 150 years we have waited in the dark, hoping our time would never come. It has come." She paused and looked at the main screen. It showed the black emptiness of space, but soon it would show something else. Soon it would show enemy ships burning. "I will not promise you that we will survive," she continued. I will not promise you glory or honor or any of the things that military commanders usually promise. I will promise you only this. They will remember what they woke. 1,000 years from now, when species we have never met tell stories about humanity, they will speak of what we do next. The Nemesis began to move. Its engines, cold for so long, roared to life with power that should have been impossible. Across the solar system, 11 other Reapers did the same. They gathered at the edge of Terran space, 12 black shapes against the stars. Sensor buoys across a dozen systems detected their engine signatures and went silent. The readings were beyond any known scale. Automated systems across the galaxy flagged the anomaly and sent alerts to military commands everywhere. The comfortable galaxy suddenly felt much less comfortable. On the bridge of the Nemesis, Captain reviewed the tactical data. The Iran hegemony had assembled a fleet of 200 warships in the system. They expected humanity to come through that system. They expected to crush whatever small fleet humanity could gather. They did not know what was coming. Set course for, the captain ordered. Maximum speed, silent running. The helmsman looked at her. Captain, standard FTL travel will alert them to our approach. Smiled, it was not a pleasant smile. Who said anything about standard FTL? The Reapers vanished from normal space without a ripple. Human engineers had solved problems that galactic scientists said were unsolvable. The Reapers could travel faster than light without leaving any trace. When they arrived they would be a complete surprise. The hunt had begun. High Warlord stood on the command deck of his flagship, the Dominance of Stars, and felt pleased with himself. His fleet of 200 warships floated in perfect formation around the system. This system was the gateway between human space and hegemony territory. Any attack from Earth would have to come through here. He reviewed the intelligence reports on human military strength for the 100th time. The Terran defense fleet was respectable by galactic standards. Perhaps 40 modern warships, another 60 older vessels, and various support craft. Against his 200 ships, each one superior in technology, the humans had no chance. Allowed himself to imagine the coming victory. He would crush the human fleet. Then he would advance on Earth itself. Another planet turned to glass. Another weak species removed from the galaxy. His name would be remembered forever as the warlord who eliminated 2 species in a single campaign. His second-in-command, a younger Iran named, approached with a data tablet. Warlord, our scouts report no unusual activity in human space. Their fleet remains near Earth. They appear to be preparing defensive positions. Of course they are, said with contempt. They know they cannot win in open battle. They will hide behind their planet and hope we grow tired of the siege. Foolish. We will simply burn their world from orbit as we did the... He turned to look out the main viewport. The stars shone cold and distant. Somewhere out there, humans were mourning their dead friends and preparing to join them. Signal the fleet, he ordered. We advance toward Earth in 6 hours. Let this campaign end quickly. He never gave that order. The first sign of trouble was a sensor alert. One of the scout ships on the edge of the formation reported something strange, a ripple in space, not the normal signature of faster-than-light travel, something different, something wrong. Then the scout ship stopped reporting. Its signal simply ended. Felt a cold sensation in his stomach. What happened to that ship? Before anyone could answer, space itself seemed to tear open. 12 black shapes emerged from nothing. They had no engine trails. They had no shield signatures. They simply appeared like shadows given form. The bridge crew stared at their screens in confusion. The computer systems tried to identify the new contacts and failed. The energy readings were impossible. Nothing that size should produce that much power. Opened a channel to his fleet. All ships target those vessels, destroy them immediately. 180 warships turned their weapons toward the 12 black shapes. Thousands of plasma cannons charged, missile tubes opened, targeting systems locked on. The black ships did not run, they did not raise shields, they simply sat there. Then one of them launched something. It was small, barely visible on sensors. It moved slowly compared to energy weapons, almost laughed. Were the humans so primitive they still used missiles? The small object reached the center of his fleet formation and activated. Had never seen anything like what happened next. A sphere of absolute darkness appeared in space. It was perhaps 2 kilometers across, and everything inside that sphere simply vanished. Ships, crew, weapons, debris. 43 hegemony warships were there one moment and gone the next. The sphere collapsed after only a second, but in that second, nearly a quarter of his fleet had ceased to exist. The remaining ships were still processing what had happened when the black vessels opened fire. Metal rods traveling at impossible speeds punched through shields like they were not there. The shields were designed to stop energy weapons. They had no defense against solid objects moving at a significant fraction of light speed. A single rod hit the cruiser Pride of Conquest and kept going. The ship did not explode. It simply broke into pieces as the rod's energy transferred into its hull. Plasma lances, burning hotter than anything hegemony science thought possible, carved through destroyers like knives through water. Ships were cut in half. Ships were melted into slag. Ships were simply erased. And all the while, the black ships broadcast something on every frequency. At first, thought it was a weapon, some kind of electronic attack. Then he realized it was sound, music. Children singing. The song was in a language he did not understand, but his translator eventually identified it. The words spoke of friendship across the stars, of hope for a peaceful future, of love between different kinds of beings. It was the most terrifying thing had ever heard. The battle, if it could be called that, lasted 11 minutes. In those 11 minutes, the hegemony fleet was destroyed, not defeated, not scattered, destroyed. 177 warships reduced to debris and ash. The 12 black ships moved through the formation like predators through a herd of prey. They targeted command ships first, blinding the fleet of leadership. Then they hit the supply vessels and communication relays. Then they simply killed everything that remained. Watched his mighty fleet die around him. He watched ships he had commanded for decades vanish in fire and darkness. He watched the impossible become real. His flagship took 3 hits. The first destroyed the engine section. The second killed everyone on the lower decks. The third came straight for the bridge. In his final moment, saw one of the black ships pass directly in front of his viewport. It was so close he could see details on its hull. He saw what looked like writing in an alien script. Later analysis of the battle footage would reveal the words painted on the ship's side. They said, "Remember." The dominance of stars exploded. High Warlord became particles scattered across empty space. When the fire faded, 23 hegemony ships remained. They were already running, their engines at maximum power, their crews screaming in terror. The black ships let them go. They needed survivors. They needed witnesses. Captain surveyed the battlefield from the bridge of the Nemesis. Debris floated everywhere. The remains of what had been the most powerful fleet in the sector. She felt no joy. She felt no triumph. She felt only tired. "Damage report," she said. "Minor damage to ships 3, 7, and 11, her tactical officer replied. "No casualties. All weapons systems operational. 12 ships against 200, 0 losses." "Open a channel to the hegemony," ordered. "Use their own communication relays." The channel opened. Knew that millions of Orans would see her face. Military commanders, political leaders, ordinary citizens. They would all see the human who had just destroyed their fleet. "This is captain of the Terran Reaper fleet," she said. Her voice was calm, almost gentle. "You have seen what we can do. You have seen what happens to those who murder our friends." She paused and let the silence stretch. They sang songs about peace. They believed in friendship and hope. They never harmed anyone. You killed them all, every man, woman, and child. You turned their beautiful world to glass. Her eyes hardened. We sing different songs. Come for us if you dare. We are waiting. She cut the transmission. The Reapers moved on. They had more work to do. The hegemony had 17 systems. It had millions of soldiers. It had thousands of ships scattered across its empire. None of it would be enough. The Iran hegemony had ruled 17 star systems for 3,000 years. They had conquered 8 other species and forced them into slavery. Their military was the largest in the sector, with shipyards that could build 100 warships a year. Their generals had never known defeat. Their citizens had never known fear. All of that changed in 8 months. The Reapers did not fight like any enemy the hegemony had ever faced. They did not conquer territory. They did not occupy planets. They did not demand surrender before attacking. They simply appeared without warning, destroyed everything military they could find, and vanished again. The great shipyard at Prime was the first to fall. It floated in orbit around a gas giant, a massive structure that had built warships for 2,000 years. 3 Reapers arrived at midnight local time. By dawn, the shipyard was debris falling into the planet's atmosphere. The defending fleet of 40 ships had been reduced to floating metal within the first hour. The weapons factory on or minor was next, then the military academy on, then the fuel depot at. One by one, every piece of the hegemony war machine was systematically destroyed. But Captain held her crews to a code that she had written herself before the campaign began. "We are not them," she told her commanders in a meeting aboard the Nemesis. "We kill soldiers, we destroy weapons, we burn military targets, but we do not touch civilians. We do not harm those who cannot fight back. The moment we do that, we become what we are fighting against." The code was followed absolutely. When the Reapers attacked, they struck military installations with terrifying precision, but the cities next to those installations were left unharmed. Power plants that served civilians were avoided. Food production facilities were never targeted. Medical centers were protected. At first, the hegemony did not understand. Their own military doctrine called for total destruction of enemy populations. Civilians were just future soldiers. Kill them all and you eliminated future threats. That was how they thought. When the Reapers attacked the system, the hegemony commanders ordered civilian populations to gather around military bases. They thought the humans would not attack if innocents were present. Captain studied the tactical data and made a decision. "We wait," she said. "Those civilians need food and water. The hegemony cannot supply them forever. Eventually they will have to move the people away or watch them die." The Reapers waited for 3 weeks. They sat in space, silent and patient, while the hegemony tried to figure out what to do. Finally, the military commanders realized that the humans truly would not attack civilians. They moved the populations away. The Reapers destroyed the military bases within the hour. Word spread through the hegemony's conquered species. A small people who had been enslaved for 600 years watched human ships pass their world without firing a shot. The Oran garrison on their planet was turned to ash. They themselves were untouched. On the planet, the people had served as forced laborers in hegemony mines for generations. When the Reapers arrived, they destroyed the military command center and the guard barracks. The mines were left intact. They were free. The subject species began to understand something important. The humans were not fighting a war against everyone. They were fighting a war against the hegemony military, and only the hegemony military. Rebellions began, small at first, a riot here, a refusal to work there. But as the hegemony military was ground down by the Reapers, the rebellions grew. They rose up against their masters. They seized the mines they had worked in for centuries. Species that had been conquered and broken for thousands of years suddenly found hope. The hegemony could not fight on so many fronts. Their remaining fleet was scattered, trying to defend everything and succeeding at defending nothing. Every time they gathered ships for a counterattack, the Reapers appeared and destroyed them. Every time they tried to reinforce a system, they found the reinforcements were needed somewhere else. Admiral, directing the campaign from Earth, watched the hegemony collapse in real time. Reports came in daily of military installations destroyed, of conquered peoples rising up, of hegemony authority crumbling. It was, he thought, like watching a building fall. Once the foundation was gone, everything else followed. The Galactic Compact watched as well. Their representatives sent message after message to Earth, demanding that humanity accept a negotiated peace. The hegemony had been defeated, they argued. Continuing the campaign was unnecessary. It was cruel. It was dangerous. Ambassador received each delegation personally. She listened to their concerns with patience. She thanked them for their input. Then she told them the truth. "Where were you when burned?" she asked a delegation from the Confederation. "You offered condolences. You sent a formal protest. You suggested sanctions on luxury goods. And while you did those things, 4.2 billion people died." The representative tried to explain. The situation had been complicated. The military balance had been uncertain. Direct intervention would have risked a wider war. Held up her hand. "I understand, I truly do. You were afraid. The hegemony was powerful and you did not want to risk your own people. That is a choice you had the right to make." She leaned forward. "But do not come to me now and ask for mercy for those who showed none. Do not speak to me of cruelty when you turned away from a genocide. The hegemony will be disarmed. Their military will be destroyed. Their leaders will face justice. If you want to help, you can help us rebuild when it is over, but you do not get to tell us when to stop." The delegations left with nothing. The campaign entered its final phase. The hegemony Grand Fleet, once 3,000 ships strong, had been reduced to fewer than 100 vessels. These survivors gathered around the hegemony for a final stand. It was not much of a stand. The 12 Reapers arrived in perfect formation. The hegemony ships opened fire with everything they had. Energy weapons splashed uselessly against adaptive armor. Missiles were intercepted or simply ignored. The Reapers advanced through the fire like it was rain. Emperor the 19th watched from his palace as his fleet died in orbit above him. He had ruled for 40 years. He had expanded the hegemony's territory by 3 systems. He had approved the operation against personally, seeing it as a demonstration of strength that would secure his legacy. Now he understood what his legacy would actually be. He would be the last emperor, the one who destroyed everything his ancestors had built. When the final hegemony warship exploded, the Reapers did not attack the planet. They simply waited in orbit, black shapes against the stars. A message came from the lead ship. "This is Captain. I request a meeting with Emperor. We have terms to discuss." The Emperor had no choice. He could refuse and watch his people die, or he could surrender and hope the humans were truly different from his own kind. He agreed to meet. Captain came down to the planet personally. She brought no guards. She carried no weapons. She walked into the imperial palace alone, her boots echoing on marble floors that had seen 3,000 years of hegemony rule. The emperor waited in his throne room, surrounded by advisors and ceremonial guards. He had expected the human to be large, fierce, a warrior. Instead, he saw a tired woman with hair and sad eyes. "You have won," he said. "What do you want?" Reached into her pocket and pulled out a small device. She pressed a button and images appeared in the air above them. Images of beautiful cities with spires that reached toward the sky, blue seas filled with life, children playing in gardens, families gathering for meals. Then the images changed, burning, screaming, death, And finally nothing, just glass and silence. "I want justice," said quietly. "I want your military dismantled. I want reparations paid to every species you conquered. I want your war criminals tried and punished. And I want memorial sites on every world in your empire so that no one ever forgets what you did." The emperor protested. The terms were impossible, humiliating, unprecedented. Looked at him with those sad, tired eyes. Signed the surrender. He signed. 1 year after the surrender, the Reapers returned to their hidden berths. They slipped back into the darkness between planets, their engines powering down, their weapons going cold. The 12 ships that had changed the galaxy settled into silence once more. There were no parades for the crews, no monuments built in their honor, no medals given before cheering crowds. The Reaper program remained classified. The galaxy knew that humans had built terrible weapons, but they did not know the details. They did not know the names or faces of those who had served. Captain requested this herself. "We did what had to be done," she told Admiral when he offered public recognition. "We are not heroes. We are not villains. We are simply the ones who did the job. Let us go back to being ordinary people." She retired from the service on a quiet Tuesday morning. She walked out of a military facility that officially did not exist and took a transport to her childhood home on Mars. Her family welcomed her with tears and long embraces. They did not ask about what she had done. They did not need to. On the site where the city of once stood on Prime, humans built something new. They brought water from Earth's oceans, billions of liters transported across light years. They brought soil from forests on every continent. They brought seeds from flowers and trees and crops, along with something special, memory flowers, recovered from a botanical archive that had somehow survived the destruction. The garden covered 12 square kilometers. At its center was a lake filled with water that mixed Earth's seas with. Around the lake grew plants from 2 worlds, living together as their peoples once had. The survivors came to see it. There were perhaps 50,000 left in all the galaxy, those who had been traveling when their world burned, those who had been living on distant stations, those who had escaped by luck or fate. They walked through the garden in silence, touching plants that reminded them of home, weeping beside water that smelled of places they would never see again. Elder, one of the oldest survivors, found Ambassador standing by the lake. The human woman had come for the garden's opening ceremony, but had stayed after everyone else left. She stood alone, staring at the water. "You carry heavy weight," said gently. This voice was soft and musical even when speaking words of sorrow. "I see it in your eyes, in how you hold yourself." Did not look away from the water. "I received Elder's last transmission. I heard him call for help. I could not save him. I could not save any of you." "You saved us," said. "Those of us who remain. You fought for us when no one else would. You built this garden so we would have a place to remember." "It is not enough. Nothing could ever be enough." Placed a webbed hand on shoulder. "You are right. Nothing can bring back what we lost. No weapon, no victory, no justice can restore 4 billion souls, but this is not nothing." He gestured to the garden around them. "This is something. This is proof that they are not forgotten, that they mattered, that someone cared enough to fight and to build." Finally turned to look at him, tears ran down her face. "How do you not hate us, all of us? The galaxy abandoned you. Even we humans, we could only offer revenge. We could not offer protection. We could not save your world." Was quiet for a long moment. "I have thought about this for many months," he admitted. "In the dark hours when sleep will not come, I have wondered if hate would be easier, if it would make the pain less." He shook his head slowly. "But hate is what killed my people. Hate is what burned my world. If I allow hate into my heart, then the hegemony wins. They turn me into something like them, and I refuse. I refuse to let their evil change what I am." He looked up at the sky where Earth's sun had been placed in careful position to give the garden light. "We are a small people now, Perhaps we will fade away entirely in a few generations. Perhaps our songs will be forgotten, our stories lost. But we will not end as something hateful. We will end as we lived, with kindness, with hope, with love for those who showed us love. Wept openly, held her hand and waited, patient and gentle as had always been. The galaxy changed in the years that followed. The Galactic Compact reformed its charter. A mutual defense clause was added, backed by the silent understanding of what rested in hidden berths around Earth's sun. Attack one member and you attacked all. No exceptions. No excuses. No empty words. The species that the hegemony had conquered built new nations. They established a democracy for the first time in their history. They turned their mining expertise into something positive, helping to build stations and ships across the sector. Former slaves became free citizens of a galaxy that was slowly learning to be better. Some species feared humanity now. They looked at the Reapers and saw death waiting to be unleashed. They avoided human ships and human diplomats. They wondered when Earth would turn its weapons against someone else. But more species saw something different. They saw a people who had built terrible power and chosen to use it justly, who had destroyed a military but spared civilians, who had demanded justice but not genocide, who had built a garden on the ashes of their friend's world. Admiral retired to a small house overlooking the Pacific Ocean on Earth. He spent his days tending a garden of his own, much smaller than the one on Prime. He grew memory flowers among Earth roses. The memory flowers bloomed in colors that reflected the emotions of those nearby. When was alone with them, they glowed a deep, steady blue, the color of sadness, the color of peace. His granddaughter visited him one summer afternoon. She was 12 years old, bright and curious and full of questions. She had learned about the war in school, though not all the details. The true history of the Reapers remained classified. "Grandfather," she asked, "were you a hero in the war?" Considered the question for a long time. He thought about the orders he had given, the lives those orders had ended, the lives they had saved, the impossible calculus of war. "I do not know," he finally answered. "I did what I thought was right. I tried to protect the people I loved. Whether that makes me a hero or something else, I cannot say." His granddaughter frowned. "My teacher says heroes are people who do brave things to help others." "Then the heroes were the ones who flew the ships and fought the battles," said. "I just sat in a room and moved pieces on a board. The heroes were people like Captain. She risked everything. She carried the weight. She looked into the eyes of an emperor and demanded surrender." Captain, at that same moment, was standing before a classroom at the Naval Academy on Earth's moon. She had taken a teaching position there after her retirement. She taught strategy and ethics, and her classes were always full. "What is the purpose of overwhelming force?" she asked her students on the first day of every term. They sat in neat rows, young faces eager to learn about war from someone who had waged it. The answers came quickly. "Victory," said one. "Deterrence," said another. "Survival," suggested a third. Shook her head. "The purpose of overwhelming force is to make its use unnecessary." The students looked confused. She smiled gently and continued. "We built the Reapers hopping we would never wake them. We woke them hopping we would never have to build more. Every weapon we create is a failure of diplomacy, a failure of understanding, a failure of imagination. If we had been smarter, if we had been better, we might have found another way." She paused. "But when the failures come, and they will come, your duty is to ensure they are the enemy's failures, not yours. Your deeper duty is to be so prepared, so capable, so absolutely certain in your response, that no rational actor ever tests you." She looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there the Reapers slept in their hidden berths, waiting, always waiting. "Walk softly," she said. "Carry overwhelming force. Use it only when you must, and never forget why we fight in the first place." "Why do we fight?" a student asked. thought of elders' final transmission, of children's songs played across a battlefield, of gardens growing on glassed worlds. "We fight so that others do not have to," she said simply. "We fight so that somewhere, somehow, someone can live in peace. That is all. That is everything." The lesson ended. The students filed out, already debating among themselves about what they had learned, remained alone in the empty classroom looking at the stars. In the silence of space, the Reapers slept. But the galaxy remembered they were there, and perhaps because of that memory, fewer worlds would burn, fewer children would die, fewer species would be erased from existence. Perhaps that hope, fragile and uncertain as it was, had to be enough.